Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Jashana here to talk about some friggin' books. Specifically, these books. Oh God, I'm gonna drop them. The Cemetery of Forgotten Books series by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. So these books, sorry, I'm putting them in order. There we go. I think you can see them all. So I'm not gonna get super in depth, I guess, with every single individual book right now. This is more of just a series gush, really. So these are gothic, historical, sometimes horror. There's little horror elements like gothic horror, and then mystery for sure, intergenerational family stuff, and they're all set in Barcelona back in the earlier 1900s, early to mid 1900s, like the 30s, 40s, 50s for the most part. And Carlos Ruiz Zafón is a Spanish author, was a Spanish author. He passed away just a couple years ago. And he is considered, or these books, I guess, specifically, are considered the most read Spanish works after Cervantes, or since Cervantes, which is pretty astounding. And globally, like, these are so popular. And yeah, they're originally written in Spanish, translated into English. Oh, and the translator is Lucia Graves, I want to say. Yeah, or Lucia Graves. I think great translating. I guess I haven't read a shit ton of translated works in my day, but the prose is astounding to me. The writing skill is astounding to me. I can only imagine reading these in Spanish if you are fluent in Spanish. I'm not currently yet. I can read and like pronounce things in Spanish, but I don't know what all the fucking words mean. But yeah, I can only imagine reading in Spanish. But even in English, like the translator, I think, did a great job. And I just think these are like, they're masterpieces. I have kind of a weird history with these because the first three books, these three here, and this is publication order, and you can technically read them in any order you would like. Zafón specifically wrote them in a way where, like, he said you don't have to read them in any particular order. Personally, though, I will tell you, if you have not read these and you are thinking about it, all I would say for sure, do not start with the Labyrinth of Spirits. I think that would be super dumb. People say, like, oh, you can read them in whatever order you want, but, like, it's the ending, and it is an ending. Like, there is an end to this larger story. So I'm like, I don't know why you would ever do that. And like, I genuinely think that one, if you read that first, it would be a little spoilery. Whereas with the other ones, yes, technically, like, you'll learn stuff ahead of time, but like, not anything crazy, I guess. I wouldn't call it super spoilery. The first time I read them in like, I don't even know what fucking order. I read The Prisoner of Heaven first, and I gave it 5 stars. And I think then I read The Angel's Game, and I gave it 3 stars, and then I read Shadow of the Wind, and I gave it 3 stars. And I don't know what I was smoking, giving these two 3 stars. I think at the time this one's the shortest one, I believe. Yeah, The Prisoner of Heaven. And it's the most like Fermin, one of the characters, Fermin Romero del Torres. The most of Fermin and Daniel, and just one of my favorite duos in like literary history. Like, I love Fermin and Daniel as friends. And so it's the most like about Fermin. And so I think that's probably why I like loved it so much. And it's shorter. There's a little bit less complexity with the plot versus The Shadow of the Wind, and then definitely The Angel's Game. Very complex, so many threads going together. And I think at the time, this was 2013, 2014, I think I just wasn't like that kind of a reader at that time. I was an avid reader my whole life, but I never really read fantasy before then, and I never really read like these more complex like things, I guess. So I think I just wasn't prepared for it at the time. And I also think I was too hung up on trying to get everything straight. You kind of just got to go into this and go for the ride, and just be like, what's happening? I don't even know, but I'm here for it. And I think at the time I was just trying way too hard to like keep everything straight. And I just got like so confused. It was like, even at the time though, I recognized how well written they were and like the atmosphere of it all. And just, I was like in that world. So I still loved the series overall. but the individual books I was like a little confused by, right? And also I read them in like a weird order. I think most people either read them in chronological, like timeline of the story order, but that's kind of hard to do because they jump around, or publication order. And that's how I read them this time. Publication order, which is Shadow of the Wind, Angel's Game, Prisoner of Heaven, and then The Labyrinth of the Spirits, which I had never read. And on reread, 5 stars, 4.75 stars, 5 stars, 4.75 stars. So basically 5 stars across the board. I love this world. I don't have the words for how much I love it. And it is just gothic, historical gothic masterpiece, this whole series, in my opinion. So haunting, tragic, creepy and eerie, and genuinely a little horror at times, the Angel's Game in particular. And the Angel's Game, psychological, where by the end of the book, you're like, wait, what of this was even real? I don't know. Like, I'm so lost, man. And then Prisoner of Heaven gives you some answers in that regard, but it's still just kind of like, okay, I know some of it wasn't real, but not what was, what wasn't, I'm not sure. It's a mind fuck in the most fun way. And like romantic as well, like tragic, obsessive love, like 10 times over in every book. And just subplots within subplots within subplots. My God. All those threads, like I said, there's all these threads weaving together. By the end, you still have questions and you're still like, okay, but, huh? But not in a way of like feeling like thwarted or feeling like the author didn't do it properly or didn't fully flesh out the story. For me personally, like, again, it was just like, it was a masterpiece of like a complex story with all these complex threads and tying all these things together. I wanted to reread it all the way over again immediately. As soon as I finished it, and I did read the novellas or the short stories as well, and I finished this and I was like, I want to start from the beginning and read these. I'm not going to right now just because I want to get to other things, but like, the itch is there. I might reread this series this year because it was just so great. Like I said, themes for sure of like the obsessive love, tragic love, just tragedy in general, the darkest corners of humanity versus the lightest, and just that kind of juxtaposition of the things we can do as people, for good or for bad. Fiction versus reality, for sure. Like I said, especially the Angel's Game. These books just stay with me. Like, I mean, I didn't finish it that long ago right now, but like, it's been a couple weeks. It's been a month since I read The Shadow of the Wind, and like, that book particularly. All of them, but like, even like that one too, like from April. It's staying with me. It's sticking with me. And for as complex as they are, I fucking flew through these books. I'm not a particularly fast reader. Most of the time, about a week is like my average for finishing books. Pretty often, a 400-ish page book can take me 2 weeks to read because I don't sit down and read like huge chunks at a time. These I flew through though. Shadow of the Wind took me 3 days. The Angel's Game took me 4 days. Prisoner of Heaven took me 1 day. The Labyrinth of the Spirits, obviously because it's the biggest one for sure, took me 9 days. And that one did have a section that kind of lulled a little bit for me, hence the 4.75 stars. So yeah, the longest one was 9 days. The other ones were 3, 4, and 1 day. I flew through them. Rarely am I so captivated by a story, like in its grip. This story, this overall story, and each individual story, but like overall too, just gripped me, had me in its thrall, is the best way I can say it. And yeah, man, all the mysteries and the puzzle pieces, like I said, you would have to reread them. You would have to read them multiple times to remember everything. Remember the names of people and like how they're connected and how they're tied together. Obviously, certain things I can remember and know, like the bigger things, but there's like all these little things too. And I just loved it. And Also, I think for me, like, part of the magic of the atmosphere of it, I'm sure it helps that I've been to Barcelona. I did a study abroad thing in Barcelona when I was in college many moons ago. And it was a 5-week thing. I wasn't there for months and months, and at the time too, I was young and I was in a weird place mentally, emotionally in my life where at the time it was like I loved the city, but I couldn't wait to get home. I just wanted to be home. Again, weird stuff going on. But like after the fact and looking back, I miss Barcelona. I want to go to Barcelona again. Oh my God, I would be so happy. The magic of it all. But so like I recognize so many places they talk about. And like the Raval Quarter, I was telling my boyfriend, I'm like, I'm reading this. And I mean, this was obviously set also at a very different time in history in Barcelona. So the city was very different, I'm sure. But even when I was there, the Raval Quarter is like the red light district. It's like, everyone's like, oh, don't go there by yourself. And I did. I went to an absinthe bar that was in the Raval Quarter by myself at night. Prostitutes, like drug dealers and everybody, pimps and stuff, like trying to talk to me, like, senorita, guapa, guapa, blah, blah. And I just was like, do just acting like I knew where I was fucking going and acting like I was on a mission. So I didn't get bothered too much, but just like the areas of the city too, that I'm just like, oh my God, like I remember this and it makes me miss it so much. Makes me miss it so much. I understand that not everyone is gonna like love it. Certainly if you don't like gothic, dark, eerie, atmospheric, sometimes creepy, sometimes horror, bleak as fuck, and sometimes fucked up things, like content warnings for some homophobia. Not a lot, but like there's particularly in the first book, and I stupidly forgot about it, and then Roger is reading these and I was like, fuck, I'm sorry, man. But yeah, there's like one particular section with like pretty like gross homophobia and like transphobia too. But then throughout the series there's several instances of, I mean, gore for sure, murder, violence, like body horror, torture for sure, very, very much torture, my God. And the Labyrinth of the Spirits, I would say especially. And then some sexual assault references and attempts, I would say. Human trafficking, war, bombs, bombings, police brutality, just fire, injury from fire, death by fire, murder by fire, all the things, just all the things. So be forewarned. But yeah, if you don't like really dark, bleak, you know, kind of the dredges of humanity, the gutter of humanity stuff, probably don't, or historical, don't pick them up. You probably wouldn't like it. But if any of that sounds cool to you, I've realized as a reader, gothic, historical, I really tend to enjoy. If it's done well, obviously, in my opinion, but if it's done in a way that like works for me, it really works for me. I love it. So, masterpiece of a series. I am so glad that I reread the first 3 books. I knew I needed to because it's been 10 fucking years since I'd read them. And I knew even when I read them, I was confused. I was like, I gotta reread these before I get to this one. And I just been putting it off since getting Labyrinth of the Spirits like last year or something. Maybe even the year before. Just been putting it off. And I was like, I need to fucking do this finally. And my God, I'm so glad I did. If you have read this series, do please let me know your thoughts below. Certainly if you loved it as well. Let's gush together in the comments. I can't wait to reread this many more times and get so much more familiar with the story and the threads tying things together and the characters. I cannot wait. Like, I'm just itching to get even more involved in this world and these characters and this story. Obviously, I love it. Like, as a series, 5 out of 5 stars, of course. Almost every book was 5 stars. Like, and the ones that weren't, if I'm gonna rate them on Amazon or something, I'm gonna round up to 5. Like, I love it so much, so much. Like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined and you have not already. And if any of this sounds good, like I said, please pick up this series. If you do, I hope you really enjoy it. I hope you at least don't hate it. And of course, if you don't really have anything to say, but you want to make your presence known, you can leave a little emoji to say hello. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.